Welcome to Uncovered Biblical History and Traditions, the channel dedicated to lost stories of the biblical past. Discover stories of pre-Christian historical roots, biblical legends, lost church history and forgotten historical characters of faith. It is very helpful if you hit the like, subscribe and share. Help build my channel and let's take a look together into these uncovered forgotten tales. Imagine this: you're standing in the shadow of Stonehenge at dawn, watching the sun rise through those massive stone trilithons. Now imagine traveling 3,000 miles east to the highlands of Tibet, where another circle of ancient stones catches that same sunrise. Then journey to the deserts of Sinai, where stone structures identical to Scottish Highland homes dot the landscape. What if these aren't coincidences, but breadcrumbs left by a single, extraordinary civilization that spanned continents and millennia? Today, we're diving into one of archaeology's most controversial theories, the idea that Stonehenge's builders weren't Celtic druids, but Hebrew migrants carrying ancient Egyptian knowledge across the world. Our story begins in 1913 with Sir Grafton Elliot Smith, an Australian anthropologist whose radical paper shook British archaeology's foundations. Smith wasn't content studying Britain's megalithic monuments in isolation. Instead, he cast his gaze across the Mediterranean to Egypt, where he made a startling observation. The massive stone burial chambers scattered across British countryside bore an uncanny resemblance to Egypt's mastabas, the flat-topped burial monuments that preceded the Great Pyramids. Smith traced these similarities to the early 3rd millennium BC, when Egyptian civilization was reaching new architectural heights. Sir Mortimer Wheeler, a Harvard University professor, examined Smith's findings and reached his own conclusion. The general analogy between mastabas and many types of chambered tomb, Wheeler wrote, is too close to be altogether accidental. This wasn't just similar-looking stones, it suggested identical construction techniques and shared engineering principles spanning civilizations. Most intriguingly, Smith discovered that ancient British builders weren't using their own measurement system, they were using the Royal Egyptian cubit, the precise standard employed in pyramid construction. This wasn't cultural influence, it suggested direct knowledge transmission from Egypt to Britain. While Smith revolutionized thinking about burial chambers, another mystery demanded attention: Avebury. Often overshadowed by Stonehenge, Avebury dwarfs its famous neighbor in both age and scale, representing perhaps the most ambitious stone circle project ever attempted in prehistoric Europe. The statistics are staggering. Avebury consists of 3 circles in complex arrangement. 2 inner circles, measuring 325 and 350 feet in diameter, sit within a massive outer ring spanning 1,260 feet across. The stones themselves were massive unhewn sarcens, each weighing 70 to 80 tons. The entire complex was surrounded by an earthwork that defied prehistoric understanding, a sophisticated fortification standing 44 feet high and stretching a full mile in circumference. The engineering required suggested organizational capability and technical knowledge that seemed impossible for supposedly primitive, prehistoric inhabitants. For decades, archaeologists couldn't find any comparable structure worldwide. Avebury seemed unique, until researchers expanded their search beyond Europe. Near Darab in ancient Persia, they found Avebury's twin. The construction was identical, same massive scale, sophisticated engineering, and precise astronomical alignments. 2 circles, separated by thousands of miles and different cultures, built according to identical blueprints. The mystery deepened when Professor G. N. Roerich, exploring Tibet's remote highlands for trails to inmost Asia, discovered something extraordinary. In lands later famous for Buddhist monasteries, Roerich found evidence of a much older civilization speaking the same architectural language as Britain's stone circle builders. The site was called De Ring, meaning the lone stone. 18 rows of stone slabs stood in perfect alignment, each oriented precisely east to west. At each alignment's western end stood a cromlech, circular arrangements of standing stones virtually identical to British stone circles. The Tibetan builders had incorporated crude stone altars positioned before their standing stones, creating what Roerich identified as a sanctuary for some primitive cult. The complex dated to Tibet's pre-Buddhist period. When Roerich compared his discovery to Karnak's famous alignments in Brittany, he found what he described as precisely the same arrangement. The Karnak stones, like the Tibetan counterparts, were organized in east to west alignments terminating in stone circles. Here were megalithic monuments on opposite ends of Earth's largest continent, separated by thousands of forbidding miles, yet built according to identical principles. Sometimes the most revealing evidence comes from humble architecture. In 1873, the Palestine exploration team surveying the Sinai Peninsula made a discovery that added another intercontinental puzzle piece. Scattered across the desert were hundreds of small stone structures locals called nawamas, literally, mosquito houses. Tradition held these were built by Israel's children during wilderness wanderings as protection against desert insects. The expedition might have dismissed this as folklore, except these structures were architecturally identical to buildings found thousands of miles away in Scotland. The nawamas were circular stone houses, approximately 10 feet in diameter, constructed entirely of unhewn stone using sophisticated dry stone masonry. Each featured a carefully engineered dome-shaped roof crowned by a single large capstone. Walls were reinforced with precisely placed stones to prevent outward bulging, and each had a standardized low entrance exactly 2 feet high. The expedition recognized this design. They had seen identical structures in Scotland's Shetland Islands, known as bothan or shielings. The same design appeared near Inverness at Clava. Construction methods, proportions, and engineering solutions were virtually indistinguishable across these vastly separated locations. Perhaps the most provocative connection came from Sir Henry Morton Stanley, the famous British explorer. Investigating ancient Palestinian sites, Stanley documented a stone circle atop Mount Gerizim, which he identified as the Mount of God. This was, according to Stanley, the oldest sanctuary in Palestine, with design nearly identical with the so-called Druidic circles of Britain. The religious significance was profound. Mount Gerizim was where, according to biblical tradition, Melchizedek, the mysterious priest of the Most High God, had emerged from a stone circle to meet Abraham, bearing bread and wine. Here Abraham received blessings and promises that, as Stanley noted, have been so literally fulfilled. This suggested the stone circle tradition wasn't merely architectural, it was fundamentally religious, representing sacred space connecting the British Isles to Hebrew religious tradition's very foundations. As researchers assembled these scattered evidence pieces, a remarkable picture emerged. The architectural parallels, precision, construction techniques, consistency across vast distances, and key sites' religious significance all pointed toward an extraordinary conclusion: Britain's megalithic monument builders were either Hebrews themselves or Hebrew ancestors. This wasn't about cultural influence or trade relationships. The evidence suggested direct migration of what biblical tradition called the building race, descended from Shem and credited with constructing Egypt's Great Pyramid. Groups of these master builders had been moving westward for millennia, carrying accumulated architectural wisdom. The journey took them from Egypt's great building projects, where they perfected techniques, through the Middle East where they established sites like Mount Gerizim, across Central Asia where they marked Tibet, and finally to the British Isles, where their knowledge culminated in Stonehenge and Avebury construction. This wasn't a single exodus but gradual movement spanning centuries. Each generation pushed further west, carrying forward ancestors' sacred knowledge, building techniques, measurement systems, astronomical knowledge, and religious traditions that became woven into Western civilization's foundations. This theory's implications extend far beyond archaeology. If correct, it suggests humanity's most impressive prehistoric achievements weren't isolated primitive societies' work, but the product of a sophisticated, far-flung civilization with advanced engineering, astronomy, and mathematical knowledge. The Royal Egyptian cubit in British monuments, identical construction techniques spanning continents, consistent east to west orientations from Tibet to Brittany, all point toward prehistoric organization and knowledge transfer that challenges fundamental assumptions about ancient capabilities. Whether one accepts this theory or not, the evidence demands explanation. How did identical architectural solutions emerge independently across such distances? How did prehistoric builders achieve such precision without modern surveying tools? Why do these monuments' religious traditions show remarkable consistency across different cultures and continents? The stone builders left us a mystery written in granite and sarsen, in precisely aligned rows and carefully measured circles. Their legacy stands not just in monuments they built, but in questions they force us to ask about our prehistoric world's sophistication and interconnectedness. If you would like further context and the rest of the story, check out previous videos and future videos. If you would like more information where to research this subject, pause this image and look into these resources or find resources in description. If you have book sources or links of your own on this subject, please share in comments or email me. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this forgotten biblical story. Leave a like, comment, share and subscribe. This is very helpful. Join me next time for another lost story of our biblical history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.